Tien walked slowly, his boots pressing softly into the reddish-brown soil of the frontier plains. The planet, named New Comanche by the settlers who had arrived generations ago, stretched endlessly in every direction. The sky was pale blue, and twin suns warmed the horizon, making the distant mountains shimmer. Tien, a solitary Comanche wanderer, had learned to read the land like a book. Every ridge, every dried riverbed, every strange metal outcropping told him something about the world and the humans who had tried to live on it. Tien was not a man who sought company. Most people in the colonies were busy building, fighting, or arguing. He preferred quiet. He preferred walking alone. The towns he passed were often small and noisy, filled with humans who worried about supplies, governance, or gossip. But Tien had a different task. He kept watch over the forgotten spaces, the abandoned fences, the old power grids, and the silent machinery left behind by humans who had moved on or failed. Some called him strange. Tien only smiled and kept walking. The morning had started like any other. Tien had packed his bag with water, dried food, and his old scanning tools. He followed a faint trail, the kind no one had used in years, leading toward a fence he had been instructed to check. This fence was not ordinary. It had been built decades ago to separate livestock from farmland. Now, it was barely functional, rusty in places, and mostly hidden by the tall, dry grass. The wind whispered through it, carrying the scent of metal and soil. Tien liked it here. There was peace in the quiet, even if the land was lonely. As he approached, Tien noticed something strange. The fence line seemed to shimmer oddly, not like heat but like a flicker. He paused, crouched, and studied it carefully. At first, he thought it was a trick of the light, or perhaps an animal moving behind the grass, but as he stepped closer, his sharp eyes caught movement, not subtle, not fast, but deliberate. A figure was there. It was a girl. She sat on the ground, tied to the fence with thin ropes. Her hair was dusty, and her clothes were worn. But she was alive. She looked small and fragile under the harsh sunlight, her face hidden by the strands of hair falling over her eyes. She did not speak. She did not struggle, yet she was clearly waiting. Tien froze for a moment. He had walked through abandoned lands, seen remnants of old human mistakes, and even discovered creatures that no one had thought existed. But he had never seen a human left like this alone, tethered and forgotten. Something in him stirred. A quiet voice inside whispered that this girl was important, that she deserved care, not fear. He stepped closer, slowly, so as not to startle her. "Hello," he said softly, in the universal language of patience and calm. "Are you all right?" The girl looked at him, her eyes wide but wary. She didn't answer. Tien crouched to bring himself closer to her level. "I am Tien," he said. "I am not here to hurt you. Can I help you?" The girl hesitated. Her lips moved as if she wanted to speak, but no words came. Tien understood. Sometimes, fear froze the tongue. He nodded gently. "That is okay. I can wait. I am patient." For several minutes, the girl stayed silent. Tien studied her carefully. She looked 18, perhaps younger. Her skin was sunburned and dusty, and her hands bore faint marks where the ropes had rubbed against her. She had survived here, somehow, on this empty plain. Tien's heart, usually steady and calm, tightened. Humans had many strengths, but leaving someone like this alone was not strength. It was forgetfulness, and forgetfulness, he knew, could be dangerous. Carefully, Tien reached into his bag and pulled out a small water bottle. "Drink," he said gently, holding it out. The girl's eyes flicked to it. Slowly, cautiously, she took it. She drank, trembling slightly, then handed it back. Tien nodded. "Good. Hydration first, survival second." He then knelt beside her, taking out a small multi-tool from his belt. With careful, precise movements, he began to untie the knots. The ropes were old and rough, but Tyen had skill. In moments, the girl was free. She blinked against the sunlight. Her wrists sore but unbroken. Tyen held his hands open in peace. "You are free now," he said softly. "There is no one else here. You are safe." The girl didn't move immediately. Her body seemed unsure how to respond. Tyen waited. He had all the time in the world. Finally, she whispered, almost inaudibly, "Where am I?" "On New Comanche," Tyen replied. "A quiet place, far from anyone who would harm you. You are safe here." Her eyes searched his face, looking for deceit. There was none. Tyen's expression was calm, kind, and patient. Slowly, she nodded. It was the smallest of movements, but it meant the world to him. She was beginning to trust him. "Do you have a name?" Tyen asked. The girl shook her head. "No, not really." Tyen considered this. Names were important. Names gave humans identity, a sense of belonging. "Then," he said carefully, "we can choose one together. A name is a beginning. A beginning is important." "Amani Bikan," she stared at him, unsure. I don't know how to choose." That is okay," Tyen said. "We can wait." Names come slowly, like the sunrise. For a long time, they sat together beside the fence, watching the wind sway the grass. Tyen scanned the horizon with his eyes, ensuring that no one else was near. There was silence, but it was not empty. It was the kind of quiet that lets a person breathe again. The quiet that builds trust. Finally, Tyen spoke again. "I will take you to my home. You will not have to stay here alone. There, you can rest, you can eat. You can choose a name when you are ready. Do you want that?" The girl's lips trembled. Slowly, she nodded. Tyen smiled, a rare gesture he allowed himself only in moments like this. "Good. We will walk together. Carefully. One step at a time." They stood. Tyen offered his hand, not as a command, but as support. Hesitantly, the girl took it. Her fingers were small and cold, but her grip was firm enough to hold on. Tyen felt a quiet pride. Humans were fragile, yes, but they were also strong in ways machines could never measure. They could trust, they could heal, and they could grow. As they began to walk toward the distant mountains, Tyen explained the land around them. He told her about the rivers, the plants, the safe paths, and the places where wild animals roamed. His voice was calm, steady, and careful. The girl listened, slowly absorbing everything. Tyen noticed her eyes, once wary, now glancing around with curiosity. Hours passed. The suns moved across the sky. The girl's steps grew steadier. Tyen, who had walked alone for years, found a strange warmth in having someone beside him. Not a companion to fill space, but a witness to the world, a human who could share the quiet. He did not speak of the future yet. There was no need. For now, they had the present. And the present, Tyen knew, was enough to build trust. By evening, the mountains glimmered with the last light of the suns. Tyen pointed toward a ridge. "My home is over there. Simple, small, but safe. We will rest tonight. Tomorrow, we will eat. And then, perhaps, we will speak of names." The girl nodded. Tyen could see a faint smile, a fragile hope, forming on her face. It was small, almost invisible, but it existed. And in that moment, Tyen felt that the day this encounter was something extraordinary. He had walked many lands, seen many failures, and encountered many lonely souls. But today, he had found someone who needed him, and perhaps, someone who could help him remember why humans, even solitary ones, mattered. As the stars began to shine faintly over New Comanche, the girl and Tyen walked side by side. The fence, The ropes, the loneliness, all of it was left behind. Ahead lay a home, a beginning, and a chance to be human together. And Tien, solitary no longer in spirit, knew that even the quietest walks could change lives forever. The sun had dipped behind the mountains, leaving the sky painted with shades of pink and orange. Tien and the girl had reached a small plateau where his home stood. It was modest, built from old metal panels and wood salvaged from the surrounding plains. Solar panels tilted toward the remaining sunlight, casting long shadows across the ground. Despite its simplicity, the home had warmth, a quiet energy of care, maintained by someone who lived alone but understood life deeply. Tien motioned for the girl to follow him. She hesitated, looking at the small structure as if it were a strange animal she had never seen. Tien noticed her hesitation and slowed. "It is safe," he said softly. "Inside you can rest, you can eat, no one will hurt you here." The girl studied him. Her eyes, dark and alert, flicked from him to the door. Then, slowly, she stepped forward. Each movement was careful, measured, as if testing the world for traps. Tien did not rush her. He walked beside her, letting her set the pace. Inside, the home was tidy. A small kitchen area with a stove and simple tools, a sleeping nook with a thin but clean mattress, and a corner filled with Tien's belongings. Maps, books, and tools. Despite being modest, the home felt lived in. It had a pulse, a rhythm that spoke of someone who cared for their surroundings and had learned to survive peacefully. Tien gestured to the mattress. "You can rest here," he said. "I will prepare some food. Water first." The girl nodded silently. Her movements were careful as she sat down, brushing the dust from her clothes. Tien filled a bowl with warm water from a small heater, adding a few drops of purified water to make it comfortable. "Wash your hands and face," he suggested gently. "It will help you feel better." She did as he suggested, moving slowly, studying the small gestures he made, how he handled the bowl, how he spoke without rushing, how he seemed to understand what needed to be done without commanding it. Tien watched quietly, sensing that trust was building, however fragile it might be. After she cleaned herself, Tien prepared a simple meal. Rehydrated vegetables, a little protein, and a handful of grains. He sat on the floor opposite her, placing a bowl in front of her. "Eat," he said. "There is plenty. You need energy." The girl stared at the food for a moment, then picked up a spoon and began to eat. Slowly at first, then more confidently. Tien didn't speak much, allowing her to settle into this new rhythm. Words were not always necessary. Sometimes, simply being present was enough. When she finished, Tien gestured toward a small table covered with maps and tools. "Tomorrow, I will show you more of this land," he said. "We will walk together. For now, rest. Sleep well. You are safe here." The girl nodded again. Tien left her to rest, returning to his small bed across the room. As he lay down, he thought about the girl, her silence, her careful movements, and her deep, unspoken questions. She had survived alone, and somehow that survival had made her strong. But she had also been neglected, left to face the world without guidance or care. Tien knew he could help her not by commanding, but by showing patience and teaching her what it meant to belong. Morning came slowly. The suns rose over the mountains, casting light across the plains. Tien prepared breakfast while the girl stretched and watched quietly from the mattress. She still had not spoken her name, and Tien did not press her. Names, he knew, must come from a place of choice, not fear. After breakfast, Tien suggested a walk. "The land is safe," he said. "I will show you where we get water, where the plants grow, and where the wind is gentle. You can learn if you want. There is no hurry." The girl nodded, slipping on worn shoes he had provided. Her movements were careful but curious, and Tien noticed the first small signs of wonder in her eyes. The land around them was alive with quiet beauty. The tall grass swayed in the wind. Small insects crawled along the soil, and distant birds called in a language only the wild understood. Tayen spoke softly, explaining what each plant could be used for, which water sources were safe, and how the weather changed on this planet. The girl listened attentively, occasionally asking questions in a quiet voice. Tayen encouraged her, answering patiently. He showed her how to test the soil with her fingers, how to recognize edible plants, and how to read the clouds for signs of rain. She began to smile more, a small but noticeable change from the fear and uncertainty of the previous day. "You are learning quickly," Tayen said. "Many humans take years to understand this land. You already notice things." The girl looked down, unsure how to respond. Finally, she whispered, I don't have a name." Tayen nodded. "I remember. And that is why we can choose one. When you are ready. A name is more than a word. It is a way to belong. A way to be seen. We will choose together. You will decide." The girl thought about it, frowning slightly. "I don't know what I want." "That is fine," Tayen said. "No one chooses immediately. Names come slowly, like rivers. They flow until the meaning is clear." The rest of the morning passed in silence, filled with observation and learning. Tayen showed her how to repair a small water pump, how to prepare simple meals, and how to gather firewood safely. The girl mimicked his movements, careful but increasingly confident. Tayen noticed her confidence growing with each step, each gesture. By midday, the suns were high, and the heat pressed down on the plains. Tayen suggested a rest. They sat in the shade of the house, drinking water and watching the grass ripple in the wind. Tayen shared small stories of the planet, how humans had come long ago, how they had built settlements, and how the land had always changed, regardless of human presence. "You see," Tayen said, "humans leave many things behind. Some good, some not so good. But the land remains. It teaches us patience. It teaches us respect." The girl listened, nodding slowly. She had never had someone explain the world to her like this. Most humans she had encountered were hurried, impatient, or careless. Tayen's patience felt strange but comforting. As the day moved forward, Tayen suggested they explore a nearby grove of trees. The girl hesitated at first but then agreed. Together, they walked through the grove, noticing small animals, unusual rocks, and hidden streams. Tayen taught her to identify edible plants and how to avoid dangerous ones. She began to ask more questions, her voice growing steadier with each one. "What is this plant?" she asked, pointing to a low bush with green leaves. "That is a berry bush," Tayen explained. "The berries are sweet, but you must eat only a few at a time. Nature is generous, but we must be careful." The girl nodded, tasting one and then another, delight spreading across her face. Tayen smiled. Small victories, he thought, were often the most important. By evening, they returned home. The girl moved more confidently now, carrying firewood and helping Tayen prepare the meal. She did not speak much, but her presence was enough. Tayen felt a quiet satisfaction. She was learning, adapting, and beginning to trust him. After dinner, they sat together by a small lamp. Tayen took out a notebook and began sketching the land, marking the places they had visited. "This," he said, "is your map too. You can help me add to it. You can decide what is important." The girl studied the map carefully, tracing lines with her finger. She was silent for a long time, thinking. Finally, she said, "I like this. It feels mine." Tayen nodded. "Good. You belong here, as much as I do. We can build our home together, our life together, if you wish. Nothing is forced. Everything grows slowly." The girl smiled faintly, and for the first time, Tayen saw something that resembled hope. Not the fragile hope of survival alone, but the steady hope of a person who could begin to belong. As night fell, Tyen pointed to the stars. Do you see them? Each one is a world, a story, a place humans have touched. And we here, now we are part of that story too. It is small, yes, but it is ours. The girl looked up, eyes wide. She had never considered herself part of anything before, but tonight, under the stars, she felt something stir inside her. A sense of possibility, of connection, of life beyond fear. And Tyen, watching her, understood that the journey ahead would not be simple, but it would be worth it. For the first time in a long while, he was not walking alone, and she, the girl without a name, was beginning to imagine a life where she might belong, where she might be seen, and where she might choose who she could become. Morning arrived slowly over the plains of New Comanche, painting the sky in soft shades of pink and gold. The girl, still unnamed, woke to the gentle hum of the small solar panels on Tyen's home. She had slept better than she had in years, a deep and quiet sleep that came from safety and care. For the first time, she felt a little of the peace that Tyen carried with him wherever he walked. Tyen was already awake, sitting cross-legged on the floor, preparing a small breakfast. He hummed softly, moving with calm precision. The girl watched him, curiosity in her eyes, and then quietly rose to help. She carried water from the small storage container, careful not to spill a drop, and set it beside him. Tyen smiled gently at her. "You are learning fast," he said. "Even the smallest gestures matter. Water, food, care, they keep us alive. And they keep our minds calm." The girl nodded, unsure of what to say. Words were still new to her, still awkward in her mouth. Tyen did not rush her. He had learned long ago that patience was a teacher stronger than any force. After breakfast, Tyen suggested a walk to the nearby grove. The girl hesitated, glancing at the distant trees. "Do you want to?" Tyen asked softly. "I think so," she replied, her voice low but steady. Together, they walked through the tall grass. Tyen pointed out small animals, hidden streams, and plants with unusual colors. The girl listened, absorbing every word, every detail. Her hands brushed the grass lightly, as if discovering a new world. Tyen smiled quietly. She was curious now. Not just cautious. Curiosity was the beginning of learning, and learning was the beginning of growth. After some time, they reached a shaded clearing in the grove. Tyen sat on a fallen log and gestured for the girl to join him. "Today," he said, "we will do something important. You have no name yet. That is not a problem. But a name is not just a word. It is a way to say, I exist. I belong." Names give people roots, like trees in the soil. The girl looked down at her hands. She had never thought about her existence in that way. She had survived without a name, without anyone to tell her who she was, and yet, somehow, hearing Tyen's words, she realized she wanted a name. Not just any name, but a name that could belong to her. Tyen continued softly. "A name can be anything you choose. It can mean something you like. It can be a sound that feels right. It can be a word that grows inside you, slowly, until it feels like your own." The girl thought about it. She considered the trees, the wind, the small animals they had seen. She thought about the sun and the land that stretched endlessly before her. Slowly, a word came to her mind. She whispered it, almost to herself. "Asha." Tyen looked at her. "Asha," he repeated. "Do you know what it means?" "I think it means hope," she said softly. "I read it once, in a book that was left behind. It felt good." "Climb," Tyen nodded. "Then Asha it shall be. You are Asha now. A name is not just spoken, it is lived. And you will live it fully." Asha smiled faintly, the first genuine smile Tyen had seen from her. It was small, But it carried something deeper than happiness. It carried relief, recognition, and the quiet joy of belonging. They stayed in the grove for a while, letting the name settle in. Tien showed her how to trace shapes in the dirt, how to write letters and words carefully with sticks. Asha practiced writing her new name, feeling its weight and meaning with each stroke. Asha, she whispered again, smiling as the letters formed beneath her fingers. It is mine. Asha. Tien watched her. His heart quietly warmed. He had known many humans in his life, some who built empires, some who failed spectacularly, but none had touched him like this. Asha's courage, her willingness to trust, and her gentle curiosity reminded him of why humans endured. They adapted, they learned, they grew. Even in loneliness, they could find connection. After their lessons in the grove, they returned home. Tien had a small surprise for her. He opened a cupboard filled with old tools, fabrics, and simple decorations he had collected over the years. You will need something to call your own, he said. A space where you can feel comfortable and safe. You may choose. Asha's eyes widened as she examined the items. She picked a small woven mat, soft and colorful. Then she chose a simple wooden box, just large enough to hold small treasures. Tien smiled. Good choices. These will be your things. You may keep them here, and you may add to them as you wish. A home is not just a building. It is where your heart feels safe. Asha spent the afternoon arranging her small space. She placed stones she found in the grove, a few feathers, and a tiny drawing she had made of the sun. Tien watched quietly, letting her create. Each item, each careful placement, was a step toward understanding who she was and who she could become. When evening came, Tien suggested they cook together. He showed her how to mix simple ingredients, how to stir gently over the small stove, and how to taste without hurry. Asha laughed softly when a bit of sauce spilled on her hand. Tien chuckled too, the sound warm and steady. It was a rare sound in the frontier, a reminder that life could still hold joy even in the smallest moments. After dinner, they sat together by the lamp. Tien pulled out a small notebook filled with his sketches and notes about the land. You are learning fast, he said, but there is more to know than just surviving. There is also understanding, observing, and remembering. The land teaches patience, but people teach meaning. Asha looked at him, curious. Meaning? She asked. Yes, Tien said. Every action we take, every choice, creates meaning. Even the smallest things, helping someone, choosing a name, keeping something safe, these are the things that matter most. Humans endure because we create meaning, even when the world seems empty. Asha thought about this. For the first time, she realized that her life could have purpose beyond survival. She could learn, she could belong, and she could choose her path. The thought filled her with a quiet determination. Night came, and the stars appeared above. Tien pointed to the constellations, explaining how early humans had used the stars to navigate, to tell stories, and to remember. Each star is a story, he said. And now, Asha, you are part of this story too. Your name, your choices, your life, they are all part of the universe. Asha looked up at the stars, her eyes reflecting their distant light. For the first time, she felt connected, not alone, not forgotten. She had a name. She had a home, and she had Tien, who had shown her patience, kindness, and understanding. I am Asha, she whispered, her voice steady now. I belong. Tien nodded, a small smile on his face. Yes, you do. And every day, you will grow more into your name. You will learn. You will explore. You will be human fully, completely, and wonderfully human. Asha felt a warmth she had never known. She thought about the fence where she had been found, about the loneliness, the fear, and the uncertainty. That world was behind her now. Ahead was a life filled with choices, kindness, learning, and hope. Her name, Asha, was not just a word, it was the beginning of everything she could become. And Tyan, watching her, understood that this moment, the naming, the acceptance, the beginning of trust, was one of the most powerful acts of humanity he had ever witnessed. No technology, no law, no force could create what patience, care, and understanding had created here. As the night deepened, they sat quietly, side by side. Asha traced her name in the air with her fingers, smiling softly. Tyan watched her, feeling the weight of years lift from his shoulders. He had walked many lands, seen many humans rise and fall, and yet he had never felt as hopeful as he did now. Asha had a name. She had a home. And together, they were beginning a story that no one could erase, a story of human kindness, of resilience, and of quiet, enduring hope. The frontier was vast, uncertain, and often harsh. But in this small home on New Comanche, Asha and Tyan had discovered something stronger than fear. They had discovered connection, trust, and the simple but profound truth that even in the quietest corners of the universe, humans could create meaning, belonging, and love without violence. And for Asha, whose life had started in silence and neglect, the sound of her name spoken, chosen, and lived was the beginning of everything. The morning sun spilled gold across the plains, and the small home of Tyan and Asha glowed warmly in its light. Birds sang softly in the distance, and the gentle wind carried the scent of dry grass and earth. Asha awoke feeling rested, her new name still fresh on her lips. She stretched, noticing the way her body felt strong after a night of uninterrupted sleep, a strength she hadn't felt in years. Tyan was already awake, tending to the small garden he had started months before. Plants of all shapes and sizes grew in careful rows, their roots drinking the clean water he had collected from a nearby stream. The garden was modest but alive, a reflection of Tyan himself, careful, patient, and full of quiet purpose. "Good morning, Asha," he called, smiling as he noticed her in the doorway. "Did you sleep well?" Asha nodded. "Yes, I feel good. I think I like it here." Tyan's smile deepened. "I am glad. Today, we will do something important. You will learn more about this land and how we live with it. It is not just survival, you will see how humans shape a home, not with force, but with understanding." Asha followed him outside. He handed her a small basket and showed her how to collect ripe vegetables from the garden. She moved carefully, listening to his instructions, learning how to pick without damaging the plants, how to handle them gently, and how to observe which ones were ready to eat. Tyan watched her attentively, noticing her growing confidence and precision. "You are learning quickly," he said. "Many humans forget that the land is alive. But you notice. That is important." Asha smiled, feeling a quiet pride. It was strange to think that something as simple as picking vegetables could feel so meaningful. But in this place, under Tyan's guidance, it did. She realized that the world around her was not just background, it was alive, and she had a part in caring for it. After the morning work, Tyan suggested a walk to the nearby stream. The path was gentle, winding through small hills and patches of wildflowers. Along the way, Tyan pointed out edible plants, small insects, and signs of animals that lived nearby. Asha listened and asked questions, her curiosity growing with each step. "What is this flower?" she asked, pointing to a small blue bloom. "That is a moonflower," Tyan explained. "It only opens during the night, but you can see the buds in the day. It reminds us to notice even the small things, because everything has a purpose." Asha nodded thoughtfully. "Everything has a purpose," she repeated, testing the words. "Yes," Tyan said gently. "Humans too. Even when life seems small, every action matters. That is how we shape meaning. Even in empty spaces." They reached the stream, where the water ran clear and cool over smooth stones. Tyan knelt and dipped his hands into the water, showing Asha how to test its quality, how to filter it if needed, and how to carry it carefully back home. Asha followed his instructions, feeling the weight of responsibility in her small hands. It was the first time she felt truly capable, able to contribute, able to care for the home she had chosen to be part of. On the way back, Tien suggested they build a small fence around part of the garden to protect it from wandering animals. Asha hesitated, unsure how to handle the tools. Tien smiled and knelt beside her. "I will guide you," he said. "We do this together." For hours, they worked side by side. Asha learned to hammer carefully, to measure wood for support, and to tie knots strong enough to hold but gentle enough not to damage the plants. She laughed quietly when a piece of wood fell slightly off balance, and Tien chuckled with her. It was a sound full of warmth, a reminder that human lives could hold joy even in the smallest moments. By evening, the small fence stood proudly around the garden. Asha stepped back to admire their work. "It looks strong," she said, smiling. "Yes," Tien said. "Strong enough to protect what we care about, but not too strong to forget kindness. A home is like that, firm where it needs to be, gentle where it matters most." Afterward, they returned inside. Tien prepared a simple dinner, and Asha helped by washing vegetables and stirring the pot. The meal was humble but nourishing, flavored by care rather than spices or complexity. As they ate, Asha felt a deep sense of belonging. She had a name, a home, and now a role in shaping both. When dinner was finished, Tien suggested they sit outside under the stars. The plains stretched endlessly, the twin suns now replaced by a sky full of twinkling lights. Tien pointed to familiar constellations and shared stories of the humans who had come before, of explorers, settlers, and those who had learned to survive in harsh places. "These stories," he said, "remind us that humans endure, not through violence or control, but through patience, care, and understanding. That is why we last." Asha listened closely. She thought about her own life, the loneliness, the fear, the uncertainty. And now she realized that endurance was not just survival. It was learning, growing, and belonging. Her heart felt lighter, her mind more curious, and her spirit quietly strong. "Will I ever be able to do things on my own?" she asked softly. Tien nodded. "Yes, you already are learning. You have a name. You have a home. You have your mind and your hands. All that remains is to keep practicing, observing, and choosing. You are capable. You already are." Asha smiled faintly. It was strange to feel capable after so long without direction, without guidance. The idea that she could contribute, learn, and belong was both new and comforting. Night deepened, and a soft wind rustled the grasses outside. Tien and Asha remained under the stars, speaking quietly of small plans for the next day. Collecting more water, tending to the garden, and perhaps exploring further across the plains. Asha began to understand that life did not have to be frightening or lonely. It could be careful, steady, and filled with small but meaningful accomplishments. Before going to sleep, Tien gave Asha a small notebook. "This is yours," he said. "You can write, draw, or record anything you wish. A home is not only the space we live in, it is the space we make for our thoughts, our ideas, and our dreams." Asha held the notebook close, feeling a warmth she had never known. She had something to call her own, a space for her mind and her imagination. For the first time, she felt the possibility of a future not dictated by fear, but guided by choice, care, and patience. As she drifted to sleep, she thought about the fence where she had been found, about the days she had spent alone, and about the strange, quiet man who had taken her in. That man, Tien, had given her more than a home. He had given her a sense of self, a place in the world, and the beginning of hope. And Tien, lying on his bed across the room, felt the weight of responsibility ease from his shoulders. He had planned little, prepared little, Yet the home they had created together was more than he had imagined. It was alive with trust, care, and human kindness. The frontier was still vast and uncertain, but for the first time, it felt like a place where connection, understanding, and hope could thrive. Tomorrow, they would continue learning, exploring, and growing. But tonight, they simply existed side by side, human to human, heart to heart, in a world that had once been lonely, but was now full of life. And as the stars shone above, Tien and Asha both understood something profound. A home is never truly planned. It grows slowly, patiently, through care, understanding, and the quiet choices that humans make every day. In this small home on New Comanche, a life that had begun with fear and solitude had transformed into one of belonging, hope, and endless possibility. The morning sun rose slowly over New Comanche, spilling golden light across the plains. Tien and Asha woke to the familiar sounds of birds, the whisper of wind through the grass, and the soft hum of their home's solar panels. It was a quiet morning, but quiet in a way that felt alive and comforting. Asha stretched and walked to the small garden. She ran her hands gently over the plants, feeling the leaves and stems, checking for ripeness. She had learned so much in the past days about the land, about care, and about herself. And now, she felt a quiet confidence that had never existed before. Tien emerged from the home carrying a basket. "Good morning, Asha," he said. "Today, we will continue learning. But I also want you to try something new. You have learned about the land, about care, about survival. Now, I want you to explore how to create, how to contribute to our home in your own way." Asha looked at him, curious. "Create?" she asked. "Yes," Tien replied. "A home is not just a shelter. It is a space we shape. Together. You can decide what matters to you. How to make this space yours." Asha thought for a moment. She looked around at the small home they had built, at the garden, the tools, the small treasures she had placed in her corner. Slowly, an idea formed. "I want to make a place for the animals," she said. "A space where the small creatures can stay safe, just like I am safe here." Tien nodded, smiling. "That is a good idea. Let us work on it together." They gathered wood, leaves, and soft moss from the nearby plains. Tien showed her how to build small shelters that would not harm the animals but would protect them from the wind and heat. Asha worked carefully, placing moss in the corners, making tiny entrances, and creating spaces where birds and small mammals could rest. She laughed quietly when a small lizard peeked into one of the shelters, watching her with curious eyes. "This feels good," she said softly. "To make something safe for others." Tien nodded. "That is the essence of being human. Caring for others, even the smallest creatures, teaches us patience, empathy, and understanding. That is what makes life meaningful." After finishing the shelters, they returned to the home for breakfast. Asha helped prepare the meal, moving with confidence and skill. Tien watched her, silently proud. She had grown so much in a short time, learning, observing, and now creating. It was a reminder that humans could adapt, learn, and flourish when given care, guidance, and trust. Following breakfast, Tien suggested a walk to a ridge overlooking the plains. "There is something I want to show you," he said. "A perspective of the land that will remind you why humans endure. It is a view that speaks of possibility." Asha followed, curiosity shining in her eyes. The path was gentle, winding through grasses and wildflowers. Along the way, they paused to observe small creatures, check the soil, and admire the distant mountains. Tien pointed out signs of life that Asha had not noticed before. A small bird's nest, hidden in a bush, tracks of animals along a dry creek, and the way the wind shaped the dunes and grasses. Finally, they reached the ridge. The view was breathtaking. The plains stretched endlessly, dotted with groves, streams, and distant mountains. The twin suns reflected off a small lake in the distance, making the water glitter like a jewel. Asha's eyes widened, and she took a deep breath. "It is beautiful," she whispered. Tyen nodded. "It is, yes. But beauty is more than what we see. It is also what we protect, what we nurture, and what we create. That is why humans endure. We shape the world not by force, but by care, understanding, and patience." Asha looked out over the plains, thinking of her journey from the fence where she had been found, to this home, to the garden and animal shelters she had helped build. She felt a deep sense of pride, belonging, and hope. For the first time, she realized that life was not just about surviving. It was about creating, learning, and connecting. You have helped me so much," she said softly, turning to Tyen. I feel like I belong now." Tyen smiled gently. "You do belong, Asha. Not because of me, but because you have chosen to belong. You have a name, a home, and a heart that cares. That is enough to make you part of this world." Asha's eyes shimmered with quiet emotion. She had spent so long without a name, without guidance, without care, and now she realized that she had everything she needed to grow, to learn, and to contribute. As they began to walk back to the home, Tyen suggested another activity. "I want to show you how to document what we learn," he said. "A human mind can remember much, but writing and drawing help us preserve knowledge. You can add your thoughts, your observations, and your creations to our home." Arden. Asha eagerly accepted. She spent the afternoon drawing maps, noting plants, and sketching the small animal shelters she had built. Tyen encouraged her, showing her how to label plants, describe the land, and record her ideas. By evening, her notebook was filled with careful observations, sketches, and small reflections on her experiences. This feels like a part of me," Asha said softly. "Something I made. Something that belongs to me." Tyen nodded. "Yes, Asha. That is how humans endure. By creating, observing, and sharing knowledge, we shape our lives and the lives of those who come after us. You are already learning to be fully human." As night fell, they sat outside under the stars, the same stars that had guided humans for generations. Tyen pointed out constellations and shared stories of explorers, settlers, and humans who had adapted to new worlds. Asha listened intently, her eyes shining with wonder. "Do you think I can do great things someday?" she asked. Tyen smiled. "Greatness is not always measured by fame or power. It is measured by care, patience, and the ability to create meaning. You are already doing great things, Asha, simply by living fully, learning, and caring for others. That is what matters most." Asha nodded, feeling a quiet pride and joy. She realized that her life had changed completely from fear and solitude to care, learning, and belonging. She had a name, a home, and a purpose, and she had Tyen, who had shown her what it meant to be human in the truest sense. The night deepened, and the plains became calm and quiet. The wind rustled the grasses softly, and the distant mountains stood as silent guardians. Tyen and Asha returned to their home, closing the door gently behind them. They prepared for sleep, each reflecting on the day's lessons, achievements, and moments of joy. As Asha lay down in her small corner, she thought about the journey that had brought her here. From the fence where she had been found, tied and forgotten, to the small home on the plains, her life had transformed in ways she had never imagined. She felt safe, capable, and seen. Her name Asha was not just a word. It was a promise, a beginning, and a declaration that she belonged. Tyen lay across the room, listening to the quiet hum of the home, the wind outside, and the steady breathing of Asha. He reflected on the journey as well, from a solitary wanderer to someone who had helped another human rediscover life, hope, and belonging. He realized that homes were not just structures, and survival was not just endurance. The true meaning of life was connection, understanding, and the quiet acts of kindness that shaped the world. The frontier was still vast, the plains stretching endlessly, and the future uncertain. But for Tyan and Asha, the world felt alive, full of possibility and hope. They had created something extraordinary without force, without fear, and without struggle, simply by caring, teaching, and choosing to belong. In the quiet of the night, Asha whispered softly, "Thank you for everything." Tyen smiled. The words unnecessary, but deeply felt. Together, they had built more than a home. They had built trust, hope, and a life filled with meaning. And as they drifted into sleep, side by side, the stars above seemed to shine a little brighter, as if celebrating the quiet, enduring power of human kindness. Tomorrow would bring new lessons, new discoveries, and new joys. But tonight, they rested not alone, not lost, but together. Asha had a name, she had a home, and together, they had learned the most important lesson of all: that life could be built with care, patience, and love, even in the vastest, quietest corners of the universe. And in that knowledge, both Tyen and Asha found peace, belonging, and a hope that would guide them for all the days to come.